Hey everybody, so the Age of Wonders 4 Gargoyle update has gone into open beta. As with every single time that Age of Wonders 4 does one of these updates, everything on this page and everything in this video will be part of the free update. This will go live next month alongside the Thrones of Blood DLC, but this will not include anything from the Thrones of Blood. This will all be free content that you can go install the beta right now to experience, or you can wait till next month for it to go live after some of the bugs and some of the kinks have been worked out of it. Now, I think the developers were originally not going to do a beta. I mean, they literally said that. And I very much did argue that I think even if the betas aren't the biggest, that they're just good for the release cycle because they keep hype building for the game. And there are some good things in this beta still, of course. There's the Dark Culture rework. There's a slight rebalance for, there's a major rebalance for architects. There's some big nerfs for Mystic Summoning that have been years coming. There's some rebalancing for tomes. There's lots of new item infusions to make everything not just a wand of spiders and wand of raised dead. And there are some cool stuff coming into this beta that I think are still worth talking about and still actually interesting enough to go try out, which is why I'm even making this video to begin with. And I just think that this kind of keeps hype built for the game because you've got the beta, then maybe a patch for the beta, then the DLC release, then a patch after that. And of course, you can't keep people playing a game forever, right? Nor should you really expect to. That's just how release cycles work. And I just think the open beta is good for Age of Wonders 4 for just, getting more people interested in and playing the game. And it's worked out for them a lot. So I just think it really does continue to work out for them. Now, before I go any further, once again, as always, do make sure to like, do make sure to subscribe, do make sure to leave a comment down below. And I don't think this video will go beyond maybe 25 minutes. I think we're going to get 25 minutes, no longer than that. So those are just instructions on how to do it. One of the big things they're doing in this beta is onboarding. Age of Wonders 4 is one of the few games I've ever played that destroyed me for days. I just couldn't really figure it out. In a lot of these games, I can find enough similarities between other games that I can kind of pick it up after playing around for a bit. And I can be like, oh, well, so I got to do this. Oh, well, so I got to do that. Age of Wonders 4 just destroyed me for days, and I could not figure it out. Now, me making my videos and reading the comments, I noticed that a lot of you guys have the same problem. So they're trying to do a large onboarding rework here where they put a lot more tutorials in the game, do a lot more interesting things in the game, add voiceovers, and generally just make it way easier for people to try to get into the game. So hypothetically, if you're still trying to get into the game, this might be something you would want to look into. Now, they are adding a lot of more infusions to the item forge, and so they also appear on the map as auto-generated loot. As many of you noticed, if you played this game a lot, there would be a lot of Wand of Raised Dead and a Wand of Spider Summoning. You would find those a lot, and it kind of made loot not always the most interesting for miscellaneous items. Until you eventually crafted things like Wand of Bless or etc., there just wasn't really much interesting you could do with the miscellaneous items. And so they have added a lot of things that can be added to staves or wands. I think inadvertently this also benefits mages because mages didn't really have a lot of interesting things that they could do. You could add Wand of Blizzards, and that was basically it. There was no other interesting item or really anything interesting you could do to kind of like make the class fun to build for. It's fun to build for warriors because they have these big weapons and cool things you can do with that. Big tanky stuff is fun to build for ritualists because you can add all these infusions that give their support abilities, bolstering effects, right? You can get the heal, mass heal. Like there's things you can do for ritualists, battle saints, warriors, but mages were kind of, in my opinion, the odd man out. That often felt like you couldn't do much cool. So they've added a lot of these effects, many of which are just really, really good for mages. The first one is Freezing Blast, which is if you have the Staff of Cryomancy from the Pantheon tree, it's that Freezing Blast. 14 damage, 90% chance to freeze an enemy. It's a pretty good effect here, and it's only one infusion point, I believe, so if you find it on a randomly generated item, which I actually happen to do, it can generally be pretty useful. Crushing Anguish is the ability from the Corrupt Soul. I don't remember precisely what it does. Finger of Death, that of course is from the Reaper, and you do seem to get the Reaper version of it here, which is quite powerful. This is, of course, 5 infusion, which means you will only find this on a tier 4 item. Stunning Flash, as you all know, because you all know every single ability in the game, right? Every one of you, of course you do. You're about to tell me what Stunning Flash does. So Stunning Flash is the ability on the tier 2 shield unit from Mystic Culture. This is the one that does 3 fire, 3 shock, 3 cold damage, and then does 90%, I think it's like a 90% chance to stun in an AoE around you. So you can get that on an item. I don't find this one to be the most useful, but I guess if you're playing a mage and you don't want to be hit by a bunch of retaliation attacks, that it can at the very least, if you find it randomly, be, you know, useful in that perspective. Poison Dart is, of course, Poison Dark. Sundering Curse. Now, this one is really strong. This is from the Warlock. If you guys have used the Dark Culture's Warlock, which is getting a big rework, which we'll go over in a second. This is the one, it's base single shot, and then it hits a second target. I believe it counts as a magic debuff ability as well. So you can stack so many riding effects on this, and it always hits Rage 6. Very, very powerful Sundering Curse. So I'm interested to see where that one goes. Tracker's Mark is a 0 action cost. Well, it's a 0 action point cost debuff ability. This is from the Glade Runner. It does, I believe it marks twice and then sunders defense. So particularly if you're playing a class that has a lot of debuffs, this can be used either to, you know, make your ranged attacks hit easier, or probably more to allow all your debuff effects from your skills to ride alongside it and just apply a lot of debuffs to enemies. Flame Strike is the Pyromancer ability. You do damage and light the ground on fire. It's not the most powerful, especially because base damage is a little bit low, but it is Flame Strike. Who doesn't like lighting stuff on fire? Now, Song of Carnage and Revelry. These two are interesting. These come from the Skald, and these ones are very much stronger when they're on a hero, because a hero, Ritualist and Battle Saint are very known for having a lot of riding effects. All your support abilities apply regeneration, bolster resistance, bolster defense, etc., right? So having a good AoE effect right here that you can put on a miscellaneous item and apply to your army is pretty strong. Song of Revelry is also nice because it allows you, although it does take 2, I think, Fireforge stones, so it's a bit hard to get. Song of Revelry is pretty good because it allows you to actually generate morale. Morale versus morale bombing is becoming an increasingly annoying thing where there's just not enough ways in the game to generate morale, and this is just one extra way to generate morale so that if you're not doing order, you can actually try to participate in it. Seduce, that comes from the nymph. It's Seduce. Astral Blessing, now this one is from that weird unit, I think from the Tome of Summoning. So it heals 25. It is an action point. It is an action point, heal 25, but then you also give static charge to your ally. So this is a better version of heal. So there's Wand of Heal, and then there's like Wand of Astral Blessing, or, you know, it won't be called that, but, you know, that's what it's, the infusion are, right? You can have Heal or Astral Blessing as your infusion. Astral Blessing is more infusion points and more expensive and more difficult to obtain, but it's just a direct upgrade. And of course, giving static charge to an ally gives them 2 damage, lightning damage. So that's pretty decent, just so your entire turn doesn't just go to healing, right? Grant Defense, I believe in game it's actually called Bolster Defense. It's 0 action, give 2 defense to an ally. Once again, great ability for support riders. Ritualists and Battle Saints get so many 0 action abilities on miscellaneous items that they can just apply a lot of their buffs a lot. Now, Exposing Light is really, really strong. This is the Awakener ability, and whereas Flame Strike, I think, has like 16 base damage, Exposing Light has like 22 base damage. 22 base damage, AoE 1. It doesn't count as a debuff ability, which I'm a little bit disappointed by, but it's still a magic nuke that you can use at long range, and it debuffs people, even though it's not counted as a debuff ability, removing 1 resistance and 1 defense. Then you can also get Fire Breath, Frost Breath, and Putrid Breath. I do believe these are the ones just found on the dragons, the tier 4 and tier 5 dragons. So these ones are pretty strong as well. Shocking, I know. Then on rings, you can get Weakening Aura, Terrifying Aura, Aura of Disease, or Distracting Aura. All of these are pretty good. The Terrifying Aura is, of course, possibly the strongest one here, because just AoE -5, unresistible morale is pretty good for morale bombing. You then can also get Caretaker and Unleash the Hounds as passive effects. Personally, I think Caretaker is just totally and completely worthless here, and I kind of actually hope they remake it. Caretaker is animals have -20% upkeep. Everything gives animals less upkeep. This is, I think Caretaker is actually just a wasted time even adding. It literally doesn't do anything. Unleash the Hounds, though, getting a Hound at the start of the battle. This is from the Houndmaster themselves, right? Unleash the Hounds allows you to stack up the new Dark Death, or just to get a Hound. Now, Hounds do get nerfed later on. We'll go over that. But they're still pretty good. Just, I mean, you get them. They're free. And you get them at the start of the battle, even. And then primary weapons have the electrified passive ability able to be infused, which is, okay, cool. Okay, you get new content in the Pantheon. Now, these are completely new, I believe. Well, one of them is kind of a retexture, but there's 13 new vampire-themed Pantheon items. You get the Hunter's outfit, the Hunter's hat, the Hunter's cape. So these are new things you can use to cosmetically enhance your dude. You also get a Hunter's crossbow visual, the Hunter's rapier and whip visual, and the garlic trinket visual. These are all visual, as in these are just retextured versions of old things, right? But these infusions are new. Pull shot is an ability that you can infuse onto a skirmishing weapon, or any ranged weapon at all, but I don't know why you would want to use any of them that weren't the skirmishing one, right? You would definitely not want to pull an enemy right up to you if you're using a bow, but it leaves one action point, I believe, and then you pulls them right next to you, and then you can whack them with one attack at least. So it's pretty good at pulling people. It seems pretty strong. Well, the Banshee is just the Banshee's ability. Does a little bit of magic damage around you, then has a chance to reduce morale and weaken, I think. Not terribly interesting, that one. Piercing Shot could be interesting, but I think the devs played it a little bit too careful. It hits 4 tiles in front of you in any direction, so just 4, always 4. But the base damage is a mere 10, and you have to place it directly at your feet. You can't like place. It's not like a rework cannon where you can like place it far away than AoE. It's the 4 tiles directly in front of you, right? And it's not terribly strong. I think they could maybe strengthen this a little bit. It's an interesting idea for ranged characters to be able to have another ability to AoE, but having to be right next to people and it's 3 AP to use, it's a little bit rough. Now, Inspiring Presence, this is the ability of the Exemplar, which is the entire map generates 25% more morale. It's interesting, but I'm not sure I would terribly call it good. It's definitely not bad, though. I think that if you do manage to use this, the only problem I found is that if you're gaining morale, you tend to sit at full morale. Pretty much every build that gains morale is going to be an order build, and then order is so much morale stacking effects that you'll generally sit at full morale the entire time. Other people that don't generate morale have hard times even getting morale generated to begin with, so getting 25% more really only affects when you kill someone. Now, you could maybe combine Inspiring Presence with a Inspiring Killer to try to get morale back to your army. That could help, right? Okay. You then get 2 new banner icons and a new society trait, Apex Predator. Apex Predator doesn't look terribly good to me. You get a chunk of food whenever you pillage a province or whenever you raise a city, and vassals give you 10 food per population. It seems good on paper. My personal issue with Apex Predator is it doesn't give you, in my opinion, enough food, because when you really break it down, think of a society trait that's basically raiding. For killing a very large city, get 1 population in the nearest city. It's good if you're setting up a new city and you use Apex Predator. You can probably dunk like 5 or 6 population into it, but the population costs soar so significantly as time goes on that even like a moderate, like a size 12 city is probably going to get 2 pops for breaking down some other cities. But it could be, I could really only see it being good in Oathsworn Strife because they get really easy pillaging. Okay. Then 2 new generic banner unlocks. So yeah. Okay. So this is part of the Dark rework, the giant Dark rework. Dark is being split into 2 different subcultures, and those different subcultures are getting slightly different unit variations, and they are getting very, very large differences in the actual benefits that they do. So the Dark Warrior itself is being renamed to the Immortal. I have made fun of the Dark Warrior for being really, really bad in the past. It just was never very strong. It had a mere 60 HP. It has been buffed to 70 recently. And then on this patch, it just gets 2 buffs. It has gotten expendable because the developers have realized that it just dies all the time. And seemingly to make fun of it dying all the time, it now gets lesser resurgence. Now, what lesser resurgence does is if it dies and you end up winning the battle, then it comes back to you with 10% health, but no more remaining movement points. So the Dark Warrior, renamed to the Immortal, kind of embraces the fact that he loves to just die and now can actually just come back if he dies, which I guess they embraced the meme here, but it does make him a significantly better unit, particularly for trying to clear through the early game, because now when he dies, he doesn't actually just screw you over for it. The Pursuer has, let's see, tier 1 archer that Dark has. Now, these are for all of them, or I should say both of them. Both Dark cultures will have the same tier 1 units here, right? Then from there, it starts diverging. But the Pursuer gets a free action, Relentless Pursuit, that you can teleport 3 locations, keep all your AP, and then triple shot. So the Pursuer is decent enough as an archer for just A, being able to maybe escape danger a little bit, or B, being able to teleport in order to triple shot an enemy that really needs to be triple shot. So Pursuer looks at least decent for a tier 1 unit, and Dark Warrior looks significantly more usable as a tier 1 unit. So the Cult of Shadow. Now, Cult of Tyranny is Shadow and Shadow. So this is still the double Shadow, Cult of Tyranny. Their whole shtick is supposed to be what they call the hostage diplomacy. Now, whether or not it's good is probably going to depend on if you get enough free cities around you. But if you do, this can be a little bit interesting. So the Cult of Tyranny, they start with -1 -1 Whispering Stone. And whenever you defeat a free city hero, it is always captured and put into your prison. Then when you when releasing, okay, so I need to remember all this. Okay, free cities, when you kill a free city hero, it's put into your prison and captured, not into your crypt, into your prison. Then whenever you release a captured city as a vassal, you then get another hero randomly generated and then put into your prison. Then heroes in your prison make the free city or vassal they belong to count as though they had a Whispering Stone assigned. So if you capture a hero from a free city, then you vassalize them, then it counts as they have a Whispering Stone, which is obviously beneficial if you're trying to make a lot of free cities loyal all at the same time. Potentially because a player was killed and there's a bunch of free cities left, or just because you're running around the map really quickly early game conquering a lot of free cities, because you can. Then you get an additional +1 allegiance per turn for their free city towards your empire. So presumably, I'm going to imagine if you have 3 heroes captured that you generate +3 allegiance. Then making peace with a free city becomes 50% cheaper for each hero. That one seems whatever. You can execute a hero in your prison and get 10 stability for 10 turns. That one doesn't seem like quite a good idea. I don't really think that one looks very strong, but what do I know? Maybe. Probably not. Okay. The Dark Tyranny culture is very based on stability in that they destroy their stability to get big buffs. So you'll probably have to come up with some way to get some stability to your cities, right? Which they do kind of do, but you also probably want it in the early game. You have Collector. So instead of the vendor building, you now get the Collector building. Instead of generating 10 gold, it generates 20 gold, but you get -5 stability. The Shadow Trade Quarter replaces the market. Instead of getting 15 gold, you now get 30 gold, but you get negative 10 stability. So this one is 5 gold for 10 stability. This one is, let me try that again. This one is 10 gold for 5 stability. This one is 15 gold for 10 stability. The Overlord's Tower, now this is your tier 3 building, gives you 5 Imperium. Now that's pretty good. And 5 city stability per vassal. That one's okay, I guess. So this culture will be able to generate a lot of gold so long as they can maintain their stability. They also have a unique way to generate lots of Imperium, which is very, very, very strong. Now, the research skills here are you can give your non-cultural units your culture buff, which everybody should be assured. Everybody knows that those, right? Okay. Then this one, the tyrannical exploitation, that is a spell you can put onto a vassal, and then that vassal is their income is increased by 20% for each point of allegiance gained. They no longer get allegiance, and each allegiance point that you would have been increasing by instead increases their income by 20%. So I'm going to assume the idea here is you put this on a free city right before they reach maximum allegiance, particularly if you have a lot of their heroes captured. Man, I'm like explaining this in the worst way possible. But okay, so basically you kill a bunch of heroes from his free city, or maybe you kill 1 or 2, whatever. Those heroes go into your prison because you capture, you don't kill. Then once they're in your prison, you vassalize the city, which gives you another hero in your prison once you release them as a vassal, right? So then you get plus allegiance based on how many of their heroes you've captured, and you get to have a free Whispering Stone in them. Then once they're about to be nearly fully vassalized, instead you put tyrannical exploitation, which gives you vassal income equal to 20% of the point of allegiance. So if you used to be generating 5 points of allegiance, you would get a 100% increase. So this is very much a culture that's trying to go for the whole stability matters and allegiance matters, which is definitely, these are 2 things that haven't really mattered before. So it might take people a bit of time to realize how to really play this culture, but it's trying to do things that haven't really been done before. Baneful Curse, now this is your tactical debuff skill. I think this is arguably better. It used to inflict automatic sundered defense, automatic sundered resist. Now it's a 90% chance for 2x weakened and a 90% chance for 2x misfortune. I personally think that's probably a little bit better because you don't really use the culture spells into the late game. Only really Industrious, maybe Oathsworn can do that. Not really anybody else. So I'd rather my spell, instead of scaling well by inflicting automatic center defense and resist, than never being used, because I'd much rather use a different skill. I'd much rather have it scale a bit weaker by being a % chance to inflict stuff and being significantly stronger in the early game. Okay. The combat gameplay. So this is what you actually have your units do. Aura of Tyranny, all your cultural units, and then all units once you buff them with this spell here. The non-cultural units gain Cult of Tyranny. That's the combat gameplay. So all your units give enemies -1 status effect resistance, which is obviously pretty good for applying debuffs onto them. Then each of your units have a 60% chance to inflict a status vulnerability and heal you for 5 HP. Single shot abilities have a 90% chance to inflict 1 status vulnerability and heal you for 10 HP. So obviously the ideal here is, I don't think there's ever been a % chance to heal before. So this is very much a reducing enemy status effect really, really matters kind of faction. And very much does seem to be based on getting out powerful units early in the game that are going to be difficult to remove. Because the further in the game you go, obviously the more damage there's going to be. But if you get out these powerful units early and you beat down free cities, and you take them as vassals, and you can make them pay you a lot as being vassals, and then you can get things like these exploit vulnerability people out here that will heal up a lot. Now, this will be good for debuffing morale, because you're just going to be tankier and reduce your status resist. It'll also be good just for if you can get out some early tier 2 units or some early tier 3 units before your enemy really has that much damage to just automatically kill them in 1 round every single turn. So, you know, I kind of like what they're going for here. it seems like the weaker of the two dark subfactions, but I do like where they're going with it in trying to make a lot of different things matter, in trying to make just trying to make things that normally you wouldn't really care about matter more. The unit lineup, of course, they have the Immortal and the Pursuer at tier 1. The Dark Cultures have the same Warlock and the same Polearm unit at tier 2, but they do slightly different things. The Warlock for the Tyranny culture has optional cavalry, compared to where Warlock before did not have optional cavalry. Now it does. Sundering Curse no longer inflicts automatic weakened, but now inflicts 2 automatic sundered defense and 2 automatic sundered resist, which is pretty powerful. In addition, once it reaches champion rank, it now has a 90% chance to apply 2 times weakened, which again is pretty powerful. Their Tyrant Guard, their 2/2 polearm, is now the Night Guard. His melee strike has a 60% chance to immobilize any enemy, and he gets the Aura of Contempt. He gets 1 armor and resistance per debuff on the opposing attacking unit. So if you attack him with 3 debuffs on you, then he will count as if he has 3 more armor and resistance, which can make this dude pretty tanky. The Dark Knight has been renamed the Tyrant Knight. We'll get over to what happened to Tyrant Knight later. He just got renamed again. The Tyrant Knight, this new Tyrant Knight, he was the Dark Knight, now he's the Tyrant Knight. So the Tyrant Knight now has Charge Strike, no longer inflicts under defense, but now has a 90% chance to inflict 2 times weakened. So I think a lot of what this culture is trying to do is stack enemies with weakened and then out-heal them. So basically, it seems what they really want to do is turn everyone in this culture into a drain tank. So his special ability is Trample. Is a single action charge attack, but I don't believe it actually counts as a charge attack. So it's a bit weird. It has a 2-turn cooldown, so you can use it once every 3 turns. It's single shot base melee, so it has full scaling, no funniness here. 24 base physical damage, so a decent amount of base damage. Not insane, but decent chunk. It displaces and replaces. That's what the Warbreed does. So it pushes an enemy back, then moves you up to take their land, right? The primary target is also knocked out of defense mode, loses retaliations, and adjacent enemy units have a 90% chance to suffer weakened for 3 turns. Then you enter defense mode. So of course, the idea here, I imagine, with the Tyrant Knight is to generally be able to charge in enemy formations, end in defense mode, be weirdly tanky, and just try to apply lots of stacks of weaken to enemies so that you can not die on your turn. Or if you do die on their turn, at least it took them a lot more damage to end up doing it. It also has a new special passive here, Despotic Vitality. At the end of this unit's turn, it heals 15 HP for each adjacent enemy unit. And that's what I was talking about. If you can rush out these tier 3 Tyrant Knights before your enemy maybe was expecting it, maybe you just go for a huge play where you get a lot of production and food and you just kind of skimp on other stuff and rush out a Tyrant Knight, they will be very difficult to put down because they will be somewhat tanky due to applying so many weaken to everybody throughout your army. And then if they aren't killed, they can heal very, very, very easily. Cult of Death seems to have a lot of the more powerful effects, not maybe on their individual units. Their units themselves look pretty weak, but the faction effects look really, really, really strong. So the world map gameplay is embalming. If a hero is in your crypt, then you can embalm them, which gives you +1 embalm sacrifice, then 25 mana plus 25 mana per level of the hero. Then you remove it from your crypt. So effectively, you're deleting a hero from your crypt to get the embalm sacrifice and a bit of mana. You can then use embalm sacrifices to construct special city structures, to cast morbid sacrifice on friendly armies, and they wanted to clarify here, when the defeated hero's setting is set to owner in the advanced realm settings, an embalm sacrifice is generated when the player defeats a hero. So if you're ever doing like a PvP game, or if you just play with this setting on, where defeated heroes go back to their owner, then you can still generate embalm sacrifices when you defeat them. So it doesn't just, if you're ever doing PvP, just stop functioning entirely. Its unique city structures are the Grave Obelisk, which you do need 1 Embalmed Sacrifice to build, but you get 30 mana instead of 10 and 10 stability. Then the Monolith is replaced with the Crypt Temple, which gives you... I didn't mean to click that. Get out of here. The Crypt Temple gives you 40 mana, so it's double the mana each way. In total, no, actually it's not double, it's triple than double the mana. So in total, instead of getting 30 mana, you would get 70 mana with 30 stability between these two, which is pretty strong. The Overlord's Tower is replaced with the Soul Vault. The Soul Vault is very expensive, requiring 3 Embalmed Sacrifices, but the Governor of the city gets 2 XP per turn, which is pretty good, and then you generate 10 knowledge as well. Soul Vault looks very expensive on 3 Embalmed Sacrifices, but also pretty decently strong. The Dark Forge is replaced by the Mausoleum. Mausoleum, once again, requires 3 Embalmed... Oh, no, I know this one. In-game, it only requires 1. So this is your special province improvement for this faction. It is a Research SPI, which are very strong, that generates 10 knowledge and then 3 knowledge per adjacent conduit, but it requires 1 Embalmed Sacrifice, not 3, only 1. But you still, in order to get to that Research SPI, do need to use an Embalm, because and they're going to be quite difficult to maintain, I imagine. You get the Mark of the Death Cult, which gives non-culture units power from death. We'll get into that in a second. You get Death Wolves. Now, this is a really strong tactical buff spell. Not sure how the AI is going to use this one, but it's very interesting. Target-friendly unit regains all action points, loses all debuffs, ignores casualties, gets resurgence, and I believe even heals to full. So you can use your entire turn again, and then you die. And this appears to be kind of like a Magic the Gathering type sacrifice, where there's really nothing you can do to ignore this. You just die. Morbid Sacrifice is a pretty overpowered combat spell. I don't think there's really much to say about this one. It's a pretty overpowered combat spell. It requires army spell. It requires 1 Embalmed Sacrifice. All units in the entire province, so multiple armies even, heal to full HP, get Universal Camouflage, and then get 15 morale and 20 max HP until the end of the next combat, which is very strong. Then the combat spell, or I should say the combat effects they get is Power from Death. Units with this trait get the following when any unit dies. Now, this means when any unit dies, your units, their units, summoned units, any unit. When any unit dies, it gets +1 Mortal Blessing. It gets 2 Mortal Blessings if it actually lands a killing blow. For each stack of Mortal Blessing, you get 5 max HP, 2% crit, and this stacks until 10. This, of course, is not dispellable. I have checked and I have asked even, and it does last until the end of the combat. There's no duration on this. So Power from Death looks really, really, really strong. And Morbid Sacrifice looks really, really, really strong. Their units do not look very strong, and this seems to be their only weakness is weak units. So you're definitely going to want to get some Tome units so that you're not sitting on these cultural units. You get the Outrider, the Immortal, the Pursuer. These are all unchanged. Now, the Mortalist is their replacement for the Warlock. Optional cavalry again. They get Blight Bolts as their basic attack, but it's not actually... It doesn't blight. It's called Blight Bolts, but it doesn't blight. All it does is damage. So it gets no debuffs. The Tyranny people get debuffs. The Death people do not get many good debuffs. Death Hex, which is their version of Sundering Curse, instead of applying 2 stacks of Sundered Defense and Sundered Resist, instead it does... you get Life Seed and 2 Decaying, which is, decent enough. At champion rank, it gets +4 damage, which is pretty good, and another stack of Decaying, which is pretty good. So, I think Mortalist is a bit weaker. Once you get champion rank, it will obviously outdamage the Warlock, and at that point, you can make an argument that maybe it'll be a bit stronger, maybe not, I don't know. At either rate, I think the Mortalist is a bit weaker than the Warlock. It's just that the Cult of Death by default just looks way stronger than the Cult of Tyranny. But again, the Cult of Tyranny has better units. The Death Guard. This is your 2/2 polearm. This is your replacement for the Night Guard. it gets, instead of a chance to immobilize enemies and bonus defense against people who have debuffs on them, instead you just get a single ability. I don't know why it is a range, don't ask me. It's an ability, you use it on yourself on a 2-turn cooldown, so you can use it every 3 turns. You heal yourself for 10 HP and then an additional 10 HP per stack of Mortal Blessing. So from 10 to 110 HP, then you enter defense mode. So this is obviously pretty good once you have max stacks of Mortal Blessing, but I also suspect you might die before you get to max stacks on a unit like this. But if you do get to max stacks, you would have to kill them in 1 turn, or they could heal a lot. I do think the Cult of Tyranny one is a bit better, though, because the chance to immobilize is killer, and then the additional armor against debuffed enemies will just be quite frustrating to fight through early game. They get the Deathstalker instead of the Tyrant Knight, who is interesting. He's kind of like an assassin. He teleports, but he doesn't teleport behind them. He teleports on top of them. He gets a single action attack instead of a charge attack or a multi-attack. He gets a single action attack. Now, this is like the Shade from the Tome of Shades, in that it's just a very high base damage attack that just does a lot of base damage. It doesn't have any damage multipliers, at least until later. So unlike Charge does a 60% damage multiplier. So then that's just going to be like a really good thing. Most Charge units can multiply the single shot damage really hard and just generally be really devastating, right? But this one doesn't have that. We'll get over what it does get later. It gets the Deathstalk ability, which is a single action effect. It does 25 damage. And then what it does is it teleports on top of an enemy, then pushes them back a little bit. I'm going to assume the ideal play here is that you use this to either finish off a low HP enemy, because you do more damage based on how much HP the enemy has lost, or you use it to teleport into the middle of like a battle mage formation or something like that, just to be really disruptive and annoying, because you can run all the way up and then at range 3 teleport in, displace enemies, enter defense mode, be hard to remove, and generally just a dick. I'm gonna call it, the Deathstalker is just gonna be a dick. He's just gonna run in and be annoying like that. It's usable once per combat, resets its cooldown on kill. It has a new passive, Fatebringer. It gets 5% increased damage for each stack of Mortal Blessings. So that's how it scales up the single shot attack. I told you we'd talk about it later. It then also gets the new Blessed End. Whenever it kills a unit, it gets +1 stack of Mortal Blessing. And then it is Slippery and Universal Camouflage. It, of course, is only a fighter, but it does get Slippery and Universal Camouflage as if it was a skirmisher. This is a big change right here, and this change has nothing to do with Dark, but it's just really important. You can now toggle combat spells, and if toggled off, your AI in auto battles will never cast them, which is great. That's really, really big. Even though it doesn't take that long to say, I think that's a very big deal. This allows you to tell your AI, use only this spell because this spell is really, really, really good. This one is outrageously good, and I just want you to spam this one indefinitely. And this allows a lot of cultures and a lot of the tomes to turn off spells that they just never want the AI to use, or to only turn on one spell that you just think is like a really good spell, and you just only want your AI to use that one. Which does, in effect, allow you to dunk mana into your AI, because if you just give your AI lots of mana and then you do lots of auto battles, then you can get lots of wins with said auto battles. This is just a combat AI improvement to primal units. I haven't personally used them myself, so you'll have to tell me how they are. Primal units had a really bad understanding of everything. They now have a better understanding of how to use Primal Fury and, importantly, Disengaging Shot. The Primal AI used Disengaging Shot from your, I don't even remember what that unit is called, your ranged unit. It would use Disengaging Shot on them as if it was a really high damage nuke. Not an escape ability, no, like it was a really high damage nuke. which meant that the enemies, after you would run up behind an enemy melee unit, disengaging shot, and then they would just turn around and kill you on the next turn. So hopefully the AI doesn't use disengaging shot anymore like an idiot. Okay. There's some stuff here. Feudal aristocracy got a slight rebalance to Liege Guard. Liege Guard no longer takes all damage with a 25% reduction. It now takes half the damage that its unit would take. So if you sit Liege Guard in a corner after bonding to an allied hero, this no longer works perfectly to make the hero really, 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 really hard to kill. Instead, you actually need the Liege Guard doing something because he only takes half the damage with no reduction. This is arguably stronger if you have multiple sources of grace or lifesteal or anything like that, but this would mean you would actually have to use your Liege Guard and not just sit them in the back corner, which is what the devs wanted. For Mystic, the Arcane Guard has had its armor increased from 1 to 2. I don't know if that's the best idea, but it certainly does mean that more people can actually play Mystic. Mystic had a really bad early game that was kind of a bit frustrating, I think, for a lot of people, because their tier 1 units were really, really, really not that good. And with the Arcane Guard going to 2 defense, it should mean that clearing in the early game for them is a little bit stronger. They, of course, wrap this up with the School of Summoning, which has been obliterated. They might rebuff up School of Summoning a little bit here, but my personal opinion, I think they went a little bit too far. They kind of destroyed them with nerfs, but Mystic Summoning has been blatantly the strongest culture in as long as I've been playing this game since I started last year. They've just been the strongest by far, to the point where every single multiplayer community bans them. And if you ever talk about the easiest way to win the game, even in single player, it's Mystic Summoning. The devs have commented that in the past, they've had to literally rebalance units around Mystic Summoning, and that certain Magic Origin units could have been made stronger had it not been for Mystic Summoning. So Mystic Summoning is getting the axe, because there's just not a lot that the devs can do when you just have something that is so strong, but only strong with Magic Origin units, to the point where literally all Magic Origin units had to be buffed or nerfed depending on School of Summoning, which is not good for the game's longevity and its health. Okay. When researching skills, you no longer get any Astral Echoes. Its cultural passive, Astral Connection, has now been reworked. You no longer give 5 morale to friendly Magic Origin units, but rather, and all its old effect has been removed, and now when you are adjacent to a Magic Origin unit, the racial unit and the Magic Origin unit both get 1 defense and 1 resistance. The idea here being that you should still use some racial units, and that you can use those racial units to buff up Magic Origin units. The hero passive, Master Summoner, has also been nerfed a lot. Instead of reducing upkeep by 10% and increasing HP by 10 and increasing damage by 10%, it now only reduces upkeep by 10% on Magic Origin units. The Astral Resonance passive no longer gives strength into Magic Origin units when you're casting spells. Instead, when you cast a spell, all your Magic Origin units heal by 10, and that's it. You got a new research skill that allows racial non-culture units to get the new Astral Connection, and that's it. So, good. Honestly, I think it's really good. I think design space has been crushed by Mystic Summoning. No Mystic units, or I should say no Magic Origin units can be made good, because then Mystic Summoning breaks the game even harder. No units can promote, because then Mystic Summoning is used to force promote them and break the game even harder. There's very little design space, because every Magic Origin unit is best in the Magic Origin subculture. It's probably best if they totally reworked the culture to be something different, or gave them, I don't know, it's just a little bit of an issue with Mystic Summoning. Okay. Oathsworn, the seal bearer for all Oathsworn subcultures, has had its cooldown reduced from 3 to 1, which is good. I don't think it should have been usable only every 4 turns, every 2 turns is in line with other units. Architect has been reworked a bit here because Infinite Affinity Incarnate was broken and broke the game really hard. And I believe the first time I saw them, you can go back to my video where I talk about them, where I basically just say repeatedly, boy, this ain't gonna be good. Problem is, architects are really broken when you learn how to play them, to the point where they were possibly like the most broken thing I think this game has really ever added. They were disgusting. There was almost nothing you could do. Every time an architect player was in the game, you basically had to go out of your way to annihilate them, because if you let them play the game for more than like 40, 50 turns, it was already over. There should be no culture that forces you to drop your entire playstyle, drop everything, and immediately run them down, because if you don't, they will completely annihilate you. So Architect had some problems. Okay, Affinity Arcanate. You now start with 1 Affinity Arcanate. That means a +1 damage. That means the buffs for your units. But you can no longer have more than 4 Affinity Incarnate from monuments. I don't know why this is like breaking my brain to say. That means you can have at most 5 Affinity Incarnate. Cultivators can exceed that cap because, yeah. So you still have the most damage in the game. I think a lot of Architect people immediately, I only do as much damage as the damage cultures while having a better economy than the economy cultures. I'm ruined. I've seen people go into the Discord and whine at the developers over this, and it was like, guys, it was so obvious this faction was just outrageously overpowered. This is not a game about infinite scaling. If you want to have one culture that can infinite scale, then every culture is going to need to infinite scale, or else this culture will have to be nerfed so hard that they can never actually get off the ground, which effectively kills them, or you're going to have to rework the entire rest of the game because it's just not good. It's just not good. Okay, Affinity Obelisks are really good still. They're saying they're unchanged. They're just clarifying things. The Monument Stage 1 now gives you 10 stability income. So your late game, your Affinity Incarnate is capped at 4 from Monuments, but you get 1 baseline. So you're stronger in the early game because you get 1 baseline. You're also stronger in the early game because you get 10 stability to your city at Monument Stage 1. You're also stronger in the early game because your Shademaker had their base damage increased from 10 to 12. You're also stronger in the early game because your Incarnate shot had its range increased from 4 to 6. So taken as a whole, you need to remember that your Affinity Incarnate stacks here, and the Shademaker went from 10 base damage to 13, which makes them considerably more powerful. The additional range on Incarnate shot is considerably more powerful. The Architect unit has also received a very significant set of buffs here. Incarnate Restoration now multiplies based on the stacks on the caster rather than the target. So the Architect itself needs to have the stacks, not the people it's healing, meaning you can heal mythic units for a lot of health. The additional healing per stack of Affinity Incarnate increased from 10 to 20, which means if you do get the 5 Affinity Incarnate, this ability now heals 120 HP. Its cooldown was reduced from 3 to 2. The Tesseract that it summons now counts as a Battle Mage, so it will now get enchanted as if it was a Battle Mage. The Affinity Tesseract now inherits the rank from the Architect when summoned. No longer gains ranks from global effects like the Wizard Tower. The Affinity Tesseract is now a tier 2 expendable summon, meaning they get 5 HP per rank rather than 10. The base damage was reduced from 12 to 10. The Architect Champion rank now gets a Tesseract friendly until the end of battle instead of 1 turn. So the Architect, any buff that you're buffing battle mages with will now also buff the Tesseract, and it heals a lot. And I mean a lot. I literally have full healed everything I've touched with it. It's a lot of healing. Defenders, warriors, spellblades, death knights, and battle saints can now use melee ranged skirmisher weapons. I haven't seen anybody do this, but cool, I guess. The Crusader ambition now counts umbral demons as, well, demons. So this is now, I believe, Crusaders can now kill undead and umbral demons. I don't know if it counts fiends as well. I can't remember. Anyway, it makes it a lot more usable because there is that umbral infestation that's pretty common. So all you need to do is find an umbral infestation. Oh no, there definitely does count fiends. So if you find an umbral infestation, or if you find basically it's really easy to find it now at this point. So the Crusader ambition should basically no longer run into real randomness. You should basically always be able to find something for it. The Steward ambition can now be selected by rulers, and the Collector ambition has had its renown gained increased from 2 to 3. The Collector ambition was notorious for taking forever, just literally forever, to the point where even if you slapped a bunch of items onto a hero, it would still take an unreasonable amount of time to get your renown. So they've increased it by 50%, which should hopefully help a lot. Now, there's a lot of stuff here on this battle saint. So I'm going to be real with you. I can't really, it's hard for me to explain what's exactly going on without going in game, and being as we are now 51 minutes of my 25-minute video, that might start taking a little bit more time. So let's talk about the big deal. If you go with the cleric route, you get 1 resistance to the hero and adjacent allies. If you go the paladin route, you get 1 defense to the hero and adjacent allies. You can now take Fervorous Discipline and Fervorous Martyr at the same time. They're no longer exclusive with each other. So you go down the middle route, you can kind of be a bit more ambitious. The Bless ability has been entirely, so there's like some noise in the background. The Bless ability has been entirely removed. The Cleanse ability has been moved way up. And instead of cleanse, you get another passive effect, which gives you fortune on all your support abilities. So you can give crit to lots of your allies whenever you buff them, instead of the bless ability. The bless ability was not exactly the strongest ability. Regenerating support comes a bit earlier in the tree, and healing on your abilities comes a bit later in the tree, which I think is good. I think regeneration is just better into the early game. And then there's some changes here. The Spiritual Guide passive now increases positive morale gain by 50%, which, once again, this kind of has a little bit of a problem where in order for these morale gain effects to actually matter, you would need to gain morale to begin with, but gaining morale is actually kind of weirdly hard to do. It doesn't really come from anywhere. The Condemnation ability, this is on the Paladin side. This is that ability where they could condemn enemies, and it was kind of really bad and nobody ever took it. Its range has been increased from 1 to 4, and its chance to condemn is now automatic. There's no chance to resist it, which is pretty helpful. If you do Ranger, knockback snapshot can now be used in melee if you have it. So you can now knock back enemies out of melee with snapshot if you get knockback snapshot. I don't know why that's so hard for me to say. Okay. In the item forge, there are some changes here to the AoE abilities. Whirlwind and Power Cleave were really bad because they didn't scale and would generally do pathetic damage and nobody cared about them. So Whirlwind and Power Cleave now scale on your primary attack. In other words, when you get more damage on your weapon, these will also deal more damage. So as you start getting higher tier weapons, they won't just become pathetic. The active ability infusion Execute has been renamed to Assassin Strike. This also now gets more damage on your primary attack scaling. So when you get more damage on your weapon, you get more damage on Execute. Execute itself is now significantly more powerful. It gets extra damage based on how much health the target is missing, And it's considered a base attack, which is a pretty big boost, but its infusion points went from 1 to 2. I actually got Execute in the last game I played, and it did a lot of damage. Wind Shield has been increased from 2 infusion points to 3. Wind Barrier has been increased from 3 infusion points to 4. Personally, I would probably just have reduced the amount that these do. I don't think you should be able to get 60% evasion on your hero, especially when you've got traits from your race that can do it, especially when you've got skills from your hero that can do it. Just seems a little bit much. The Summon Umbral Demon has had its infusion points increased because it's really, really strong. Army Trainer no longer stacks, so you can't have 3 heroes all with Army Trader. Shatterblades and Javelins now do more damage. I think this is a bad idea, and I think Shatterblades was weirdly punished and should definitely have been buffed, but Javelins did not need to be buffed. Javelins are already the highest damage ranger weapon, and now they got buffed. So they do a lot of damage now. Too much damage, in fact. I think they should possibly tone that down a lot. The Hunter and Vampire Spider mounts have had their web attacks damage boosted to match the Dread Spider. Not too big a deal, but what are you going to do? Some Ooze fixes. I'm not entirely sure it's fixed everything, but, every little bit helps, right? Every little bit counts. I think that's about... Oh, no, okay. Here we've got some tome changes. Now, of them, there are a few that are actually important. Most of these chaos ones, sorry to say, if you're looking at these and you're thinking it's a big deal, they're really not. There's one big change here. Okay, the Warhound now inflicts bleeding instead of Sundered Defense, making it scale a bit worse, making it a bit worse in the early game even. Obviously, the Warhounds inflicting Sundered Defense and Marked allowed you to do way too much damage and kind of just made them a bit frustrating to try to deal with. Tome of Pyromancy can now get the Ritual Pyre to draft Inferno Puppy. And Inferno Puppy now has a chance to burn enemies. I'm not sure that was the buff Tome of Pyromancy needed at all. I don't think this really does anything. But cool. I guess. Tome of Revelry got a little bit of a rework here. Revels of Blood no longer reduces defending unit morale by 10, but now it inflicts 2 stacks of bleeding, which could be better or worse depending on the certain situation, right? Blood Fury Weapons. I don't know why it says now grants +2 physical damage to all base attacks. Isn't that how it used to work? Or did it used to affect non-base? I don't know why they say it like that. It no longer grants +5 morale and +1 strengthened on kill, but instead inflicts 2 bleed on adjacent enemies. This, of course, is to try to make it better and more synergistic for the upcoming tomes, which are pretty bleed focused. Both these effects aren't really that important, though. Not that big a deal. Tome of Devastation. Flame Burst Weapon, the fire damage done has been reduced from 20 to 15. But it now inflicts 2 stacks of burning to adjacent units. I think that's overall a buff because that stacks better with Tome of Pandemonium, and that just generally stacks better with debuff-based builds. Debuff-based builds are something they're pushing in the next expansion, and they've pushed a little bit in this expansion. So, yeah. Devastator Sphere, Detonate and Devastate now inflict burning in place on fire markers. Cool. Not really that big a deal. Warbreed got the best buff you could ever imagine. It now inflicts bleeding on charge. Oh, yeah, it's not very big a deal. Power Cleave now has a 90% chance to inflict bleeding. I don't know why. I don't know why they couldn't have just made it 100%. Why 90%? I don't know. I don't know. Now, here's the really big change. Infernal Might now applies double its bonus when applied to a Fiend unit. And just to be clear, this doesn't mean that you get 2 stacks of Infernal Might, but rather that Infernal Might gives 2 damage to Fiends. This means Chaos Battle Mages with the Tome of Chaos Channeling get a lot, and I mean a lot, of damage. A lot of damage. Like a lot of damage. 10 damage at full stacks. That's a lot. That's like a lot. I don't think you guys realize that's a lot. Balor also got a little bit of a nerf. It can no longer target fiends, heroes, or siegecraft units with Chaos Brand. Tome Discipline got a little... that's not important. Here's the other important change. The Rapid Evolution enchantment now applies to all Evolve units. It used to not affect Tier 3 Evolve units, which means it didn't affect Young Dragons. Which meant going Tome of Evolution into Tome of Dragons wasn't synergistic. Which always felt very dumb to me. But now, the Tome of Evolution now does give Rapid Evolution to Dragons. Dragons do get 20% more experience, and they do get the slip away. So going Tome of Evolution and Tome of Dragons now actually has some synergy. It's a start. It's definitely a start to kind of make these tomes actually work with each other better. I would like to see them buffed a little bit more as well, with like their ability to synergize with each other. But yeah, we'll see. Tome of Dragons is a very weird tome. The fact that it's trying to buff battle mages, but also it's trying to buff your race, but also it's trying to give you young dragons. It feels weird to me. The whole tome, it feels weird to me. The Summon Reaper and Summon Fallen Angel have had their casting points increased. I feel like they could get a better way to make an acronym out of that. Maybe make it CC here. I don't know. Polearm units have had all their base HP increased by 5 across the board, every single one of them, including the Pyre Templar for some reason that I'm not entirely sure about. I do think that, you know, any bit of a help to polearm units is good because, well, the earlier ones, realistically, I guess what I'm saying is Tier 1, you spam shield units, and then you start sprinting over to polearm units at Tier 4. This means that the Tier 2 and Tier 3 polearms don't really get to do much. Polearm units are outrageously good, and their passive bonuses are outrageously good, but everybody just sprinting past your Pyre Templar is not good. Personal opinion, yeah, could we not give that 5 HP to Pyre Templar? If you just give that 5 HP to like Ancestral Warden and Ancestral Warden just at 100 HP and then Pyre Templar at 110, I think that would be fine, right? So, just a thought. It also makes all those Tier 2 polearms, of which there's a lot. You might notice there's actually a lot of Tier 2 polearms, even Tier 1 polearms, and this just generally helps all of them, and all of them were kind of struggling. Now, the Skeleton polearm has been renamed to Skeleton Militia. Its HP has gone from 50 to 55 and then to 60. So the Skeleton polearm, despite the nerfs to Mystic Summoning, having Skeleton Militia, let's call them now, Skeleton Militia should at least be pretty reasonably tanky. Skeletons have also had Expendable added, meaning they don't affect friendly units' morale on death. I think this is because we had a funny game where someone's Dragon Ruler ended up routing because enough skeletons died. I thought it was funny. I thought it was really funny. He's like, no, my skeletons. And then he just got so sad that he ran away. This made sense to me. I understood this. The Razorback has been nerfed really hard for some reason. It now has 60 HP, 1 defense, and 1 resist, which is a pretty big nerf. Yeah. The Floral Stinger can now be affected by Hasten and Cosmic Overdrive. The Wrangler Ogre now has the generic champion rank up for support units. The Infernal Hound now has its enchant to inflict bleeding increased from 60 to 90%. The only thing I can think here is they're trying to push Infernal Hound. Kitty, I can see you. I think they're trying to push Infernal Hound to be another evolve unit where you boost up your Infernal Hound, get its Searing Blades, and then you try to like get to Tier 3, and then that can be like your Chaos into Tome of Vigor, maybe? I don't know. It doesn't seem... I don't know. I do a little bit more here. I think that's about it for this patch. Yeah. So again, I do think that these patches are really good. I think they generate hype. I think they get people back in the game. They get people playing. And it's generally just a really good way to benefit everybody. So, yep, that's it. Make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, make sure to leave a comment down below. Thank you everybody for watching. Thank you everybody for being here. Go enjoy the beta. Go enjoy all that. So, Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. And as always, I hope all of you have a great rest of your day.